All right, so if anybody else would like to take the time, I'd love for you guys to one by one introduce yourselves so I can get to know you better and perhaps pick on you by name.
Yeah, I'm Daniel, or Dan. I'm trying to be a little more efficient, so I shortened it to Dan. Yeah, I'm in Silicon Valley. I have my, this is, if you see me looking like I'm cheating, it's my little dog.
Perfect.
He actually knows all the answers.
I was just going to say, he probably knows all the answers.
He's smarter than he looks. I've tried different places to learn to program, but something about the rest of them bugged me. So this one seems cool. Santiago seems like he gives a shit, which is always nice. So yeah, we're gonna give it a try. I don't know, Python. I come from a computer security background. So Python's always been used for, or not always, but a lot of it's been used for different things you have to do there. It's becoming more popular, so whether or not I actually like to do web development or data science, Python comes in very handy. So I'm looking forward to actually know how it works rather than just trying to look at it and have a blank stare on my face.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Dan. Thank you for going first and sharing.
Don't
I just want
to.
Sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and try to. All right. So I forgot. I went ahead and I muted everybody. So whoever would like to go next, go ahead and unmute yourself, and then you can introduce yourself and just talk about why you want to study Python, or if you have any background in programming at all.
Hey, I'll go. My name's Mike Westerman. I live in Houston, Texas, and I have no background in programming real languages. I'm a statistician and an economist by trade, and so I know SAS and Stata pretty well. I've dipped my toe into R, and that's where my organization's going. But to keep up with the kids coming out of college today, they're coming out with amazing programming skills and programming software skills and stat skills. So that's why I want to learn Python. I just want to be able to keep up and pull my weight. Sounds good.
I think you're in the right place if you're headed down that data science track.
Cool.
Nice to meet you, Mike.
You also.
All right. Who would like to introduce themselves next?
Hey, this is Nirmal here. I live in Arizona. I've been working in SAP for a while, almost 20 years now, and worked a lot in the ERP space. But nowadays, in my company and in the industry that I work in, many companies are moving or interested in data science and related areas. So I wanted to just learn the Python programming, get myself, similar to Michael, just wanted to get myself familiar with Python.
Perfect. All right. Nice to meet you, Nirmal.
Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
My name is Julio Dominguez. Can you hear me?
Yes. Nice to meet you, Julio.
Good. I'm out of Dallas, Texas. So very similar to Mike. I'm in the finance world, looking to kind of apply what I can learn here to my current day-to-day and see if I can take it elsewhere. Just trying to keep on top of the learning curve.
Not a bad place to be, the top of the learning curve.
I'll go. Hi, my name is Julian. I live in Montreal, Canada. I work in marketing, but I feel I want to transition away to a more, data role, data science. I feel that's where the industry is going, and that's where I feel it'll get me to the next level in my career.
All right. Sounds good. Nice to meet you, Julian.
Hi.
I'll go.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
All right, my name's Brian. I'm from Boston, Mass, and I've been learning the Rails end of the back end, and I kind of wanted to expand on that with the Python end before I really go out there and look for jobs. Because I feel like as I've been looking, there's been more Python jobs in this area than Rails. So.
Sounds great. Nice to meet you, Brian.
Okay, I'll go now.
Yep.
My name is Aya. I live in York. I work for a managed service provider at the moment. Unfortunately, we don't do any web development or data science at the moment. But I want to looking for a language for the backend development. I chose Python because it seems to be very powerful and popular, and that's the main reason why I was very excited for the class.
Awesome. We're excited to have you. Nice to meet you, Aya.
I'll go.
All right.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I live in Kingston, Ontario, Canada, and I'm currently working on my PhD in marketing. And I've become quite familiar with R, but I really think I just need to know more. And by the time I graduate, it's just going to become extremely relevant. And I think data analysis is extremely important to know in the research world. So, yeah.
Sounds good. You're definitely in the right place. Nice to meet you, Sarah.
My name is Michael Arizola. I'm located in Long Beach, California. Run a small agency that we mainly focus on like Shopify and WordPress websites. I graduated from a boot camp back in '97, HTML only, and that was all. I mean, that held me for a while, and then I got into producing and project management. I did a boot camp last year that was pretty accelerated, and I just feel I need to focus on the fundamentals. The boot camp I took was basically front end and back end, and it was Rails. But it was just the Rails part was just way too fast, and I want to learn Python and spend more time like with the fundamentals.
Okay, nice to meet you. It seems like you've got quite a bit of experience. All right. All right.
All right. I'm Will Moore. I'm living in North Carolina, and I just graduated with an integrated marketing communications degree, and I don't think it did enough with data, which you need in marketing, and I'm also just interested in data science and coding.
Then you're definitely in the right place. Nice to meet you, Will.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else want to go?
Yeah, this is Basil or Basil, whatever you like better. I work in an industry called CRM, that stands for Customer Relationship Management. But I'm not doing as much programming as I'd like, and I'm kind of sick of it as well. So I'm hoping that learning Python and possibly data science, as well as the back end, like Django, I think it's called, might move me a bit more in that direction. I was focusing on JavaScript libraries and frameworks for quite a few months, and I joined a bootcamp for that as well. But I think that Python might just be a bit more of a versatile language, and so I'm taking this course to kind of force myself to keep on schedule. Santiago originally put me in the advanced course, but then I asked him to switch me back to the Module 1 course, not because of the concepts and topics and material, but more the entire, all the processes that you guys use. Yeah.
Okay. Well, nice to meet you, Basil. Is there anybody left?
I think I'm left. I'm
All right.
Steve. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I've been out of coding for almost 30 years, and I decided to jump back in. So I decided to look for a language. I didn't like JavaScript because it looked really complicated. So I found Python that looked kind of easy-ish. So I've been learning on my own for the last little bit, but then I hit a roadblock and I needed more instruction. So I was looking at boot camps, and then I discovered data science. So, even though real data science you really need a master's to get into. So this is more like data analyst, but it's just a way of getting a non-dead end job that pays very well.
Well, you're not in the wrong place for that. Nice to meet you, Steve.
Hey, Jordan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, probably can't see me. I think. Oh,
Am I next?
go for it. You're up.
Okay. My name is Musa Dumbia. I have a PhD in mathematics, especially mathematical biology. So I'm a little bit used to work with data with disease, because part of my thesis was to provide mathematical model to capture a disease dynamic, and I used to, some control method to that model so that we'll be able to predict or advise policymaker. So I used to use Mathematica and MATLAB, for my research, but I have zero experience in Python, zero experience, right? And I really want to be a data scientist. That's what I'm learning Python.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Musa.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Hey, Jordan, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. Hi, Frank Murillo from New York. Backgrounds in change management for consulting. Interest is trying to get over to the digital practice within my firm. I'm a program manager and a project manager, so I thought the best course would be to learn about Python, and that's why I'm here. So excited.
Not a bad place to start. Nice to meet you, Frank. All right. I think we...
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi guys, my name is Oscar. I just graduated from the university too. I just got my first role in marketing, but I did an internship during the summer last year, and I was doing a lot of data analytics then, but it wasn't enough where I could learn about Python. So that's why I joined this program.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Jordan, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Hi guys, I'm Tyler Schmidt from Chicago. Currently work in the healthcare distribution space. I have a little bit of coding background, mainly SQL, and kind of done a couple workbooks in Python as well. So just kind of looking for the next couple steps and looking to expand my skills pretty much.
Nice to meet you, Tyler. SQL is the heavy stuff.
Nice.
All right. Did we get everybody yet? Everybody that wants to go? Okay. I'm going to take that as a maybe. All right. Well, hopefully you guys will be able to connect with one another on the Slack channel. It is the Slack channel is what we use for communication primarily here at rmotr. So everybody should be in the general channel as well as in the B28 channel. That is the channel specifically for your this group here, everybody in this room. So we are about to kick off the start to a 4-month journey. Give me 1 second here, and I'm going to pull up something, and I will share my screen. So right here, we have the rmotr code of conduct, excuse me. Basically, you guys can read this if you like, but what it amounts to is here we try to respect one another and we try to act like adults. So just be friendly, don't be mean. And if you have any problems, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Santa, you can reach out to anybody on the staff if you have a problem with anybody or anything, and somebody will be able to help you out if you talk to them. That's pretty much all there is to say about that. You guys can read it if you would like. I'm going to copy and paste the link to it in the chat so you guys can check it out at your own leisure. The only thing that I particularly ask of all of you is that unless you want to speak, go ahead and just keep your microphones muted. So at the beginning of every class, I'm generally going to start out by just muting everybody's microphones except for mine so I can yell at you guys for the next 2 hours. If you guys have any questions or anything that you want to say, go ahead and unmute yourself and say it. Otherwise, keep yourself muted. It just happens to be that particularly, not anyone in particular, but everybody tends to have a lot of background noise that we don't realize, and some of us have, I don't know, touchier microphones. So perhaps like if you just leave it unmuted, we might be able to hear like your neighbor's cat in the yard yelling at squirrels or something like that. And it can be a little bit distracting to me or the other students. So just mute your microphones while you're not speaking. There generally isn't really any issues with that. So we have a couple things to go over before we really jump into it. The first thing is, as I mentioned earlier, every class is recorded. So generally, we try to start right at whatever time it is we start at. When you guys see the link, I try to post the link about 15 minutes before class starts. So if you want to go ahead and jump in the class before then, feel free. But around, like, usually a few seconds after the hour is when I will start class. So try to be in there before I actually start. And right as I start is when I start the recording. Every recording is available to everybody forever. So you guys can go ahead and check. They will be on the Learn platform. So if I bring over a tab for you, this is our website here. And if I go to the dashboard, I believe. No, wrong place. Student dashboard. If I go to the student dashboard here and wait for the bouncing ball to load, and I click on Go on Unit 1, we're going to see that we have some cards here, and these are going to be assignments leading up to the class. And then at the end here, you have this card that is for the actual class. After the class is over, the recording will be posted to YouTube on a sort of private link. If you click this button that says Watch Recording, it will take you to the recording in which you were. So if you guys are all here, you'll be able to see your guys' introductions today if you watch this recording later. After class, you will have one more assignment card, followed by the next assignment cards for the next class. It is a lot of work. We have a, I don't want to say a fast pace here at rmotr, but we have a good, healthy pace here at rmotr. We have accountability that other boot camps and websites don't necessarily, they don't always have. I will be emailing you guys. I check and make sure you finish your assignments, and I try to stay on top of you so that you guys can stay on top of the homework. Again, it is a lot of work. We generally expect people to be putting in about 20 hours a week on top of coming to class, especially if you are a beginner. A lot of these things, if you are a beginner, are absolutely brand new concepts that you may not have I don't know how to explain, but you may not have ever seen these things before, and that's okay. It's going to be hard, especially in the beginning. You're going to be Googling things a lot. You're going to be asking for help a lot. It's going to take a lot of time, and that's okay. But make sure that you put in the time that you need so that you don't fall behind, because once you fall behind, it is very difficult to catch back up. If you do fall behind, please keep coming to the classes. Hearing about things going forward does help cement the ideas that we've passed, because everything is built on top of everything else. Another thing to cover is that we have a lot of projects in this class. For now, we just have quizzes at the end of class. So palindromic primes and first half, these are quiz questions that you guys should be going over before the next week. After the first 2 weeks of class, every weekend, instead of a quiz, we're going to have projects. They can be group projects if you want to work with other people, but if you don't want to work with other people, you can work on them yourselves, that's fine. They are a little bit more difficult, but the plus side is that they get saved to your portfolio, so you will have them forever, and you can show people, hey, here, this is stuff that I've built, this is stuff that I can program. You can show people that, and it's actual proof that you can program, even if it's just a little bit. Having those kinds of things really does help get your foot in the door if you're looking for a job, or just anything. If you're looking for a job or a promotion or anything you want to work in programming, having that kind of stuff really helps. Another point to talk about is that you guys will have access to everything forever. So all of the homework, all of the assignments, all of the projects, all of the everything, all the GitHub forks and repos, you will have access to that forever, even after the class is over. You can go back and you can look at it whenever you like if you feel like you're getting rusty. The recordings are going to be available for you for as long as YouTube is around. You don't have to worry about anything like that. Again, I want to shout out to this Slack channel. The Slack channel really is a great place for everybody to go to if you have any problems with anything. Like, you can ask for help there. We have everybody who's ever taken this course is on the general Slack channel. Whether or not they check it, they are there. So if you ask questions in the general channel, someone will be able to help you, even if none of the staff is available, because we have thousands of people who have taken this class before you, and in theory, they should all be good at Python and should be able to answer your questions. Even if it's not Python related, if it's something else, you can feel free to just talk about it in the general channel. People will comment on it as they see it if they have any input to give you. Another thing, especially in this first week, is to check your email. We don't generally send out a lot of emails, but we tend to send a few out here and there, particularly in the first week. I will be emailing you guys just to see how you're doing, just to check in on you. So make sure to check your emails and see if you get anything from us occasionally. You know, I send out emails for the first week to make sure, like, to get a feel for how everybody's feeling about the class. So if there's any like comments or concerns, I can address them before it goes on to later or anything like that. So I would appreciate it if you check your email and reply if I email you, because I actually care if I ask you what's going on. Again, we are going to be doing a lot of coding this first week. It is normal if you feel lost. We do it so that everybody is on the same page. So we're going to have a lot of you, I believe there's 16 of you in here right now with me. Not everybody's on the same level of their ability to program. Python is a very easy language to pick up if you're a beginner. It can be more difficult if you're not good at programming. It can be more difficult if you're good at C. They just don't work together very well. So sometimes they can be not very interchangeable. But what we are trying to do this first week is throw a lot of things at you so we can get everybody to the same level. That's really the most important part, and that's why we have so much programming to do. There are a lot of concepts early on that we need to cover so that we can get everybody just to the same level where we can start actually building on that level. Another thing to go over is that I believe once you finish, you will get a certificate. They're signed by Santa and Martin. They're kind of the people in charge of the classes and the whole program. If you have any questions about your certificate, you can ask Santa in the general Slack, or just shoot him a private message on Slack and he'll get back to you whenever he's not teaching. He's basically awake 24 hours a day at his computer doing some kind of robot programming, so he will get back to you. You just have to be patient. All right. So again, this is our platform here. This is called the Learn platform. These are all the different weeks of this first month right here. Rather, these are all the different units. Each unit is basically 1 week, and every week has 2 classes. We are going to start having a not a third class, but a sort of info session Wednesday nights for everybody. If you guys want to join, it's going to be at the same time that class is at normally, but it will be Wednesday night instead of Tuesday and Thursday. Wednesday night, we're going to be going over homework questions if you guys have any, or if you have project issues or anything along those lines. I believe we're also going to be having a session, like an extra session Saturday mornings, but the time of that is yet to be determined. I will get
Jordan,
back to you. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Jordan, will those times be emailed?
For Wednesday sessions or for Saturday sessions?
For both?
I believe, Yeah, I can email you. That's not going to be a problem. I will let you know in class Thursday as soon as I find out if we're going to be having the Saturday session. But for now, Wednesday session, if anybody has any questions at all about like the program, or anybody has any questions about catching up with the prep work or any of the homework that was due this week, I will be able to answer them for you tomorrow, the same time that we have normal class. Wednesdays is not a required class. You're not going to, well, I don't want to say you're not going to learn anything. You are going to learn stuff if you show up, but it's not going to be stuff that wasn't covered elsewhere. It's basically just going to be for helping you with homework. I believe that was Basil, by the way. Nice question. If anybody has any questions ever, I talk a lot, I talk really fast. Feel free to unmute yourself, shut me up, and ask your question. I will answer you to the best of my ability. So,
hey, sorry, real quick, Jordan.
Yeah, what's up, Mike?
Is class Tuesdays and Thursdays, or is it just one night a week?
Tuesday and Thursday. We're going to have 2 different classes every single week.
Okay, got it.
Tuesday and Thursday night, they're both different classes, so please come to both of them. Wednesday night is just going to be the extra session for homework help or asking questions, things like that.
Sure, thanks.
All right. So I'm going to go back into this week 1 here, or unit 1, rather. Every unit is split into 2 classes. So you'll see here, we have Tuesday's class is going to be class 1, getting started, and then Thursday's class is going to be class 2, strings in depth. Before the class begins, we have these assignment cards here. Mine do not reflect reality, so mine are going to be a little bit different with the due dates and the names. But if you check at the bottom of each card, it will tell you when they are due. Generally, they are due before this class. It's not very complicated. So before you come to class, I would like it if you guys can at least get through all of these. If you can't complete the assignments, I understand that, but not all of them are assignments. If you check out this Intro to Functions one, it is either some reading or it's a video. There's a lot of different stuff. So this one is reading. Yeah, or it's videos and reading. So check them out. Generally, the videos are Santa talking about different concepts that you will be able to use in the assignments. And then in class, I am going to teach you other concepts and how to use things. So that is how that works. And then after the class is over, there is a little quiz after every single class. Again, after the first 2 weeks, we don't have quizzes anymore. We have projects. So going in here, this is the second week. You'll notice after class today, this is not the second week. This is the second class, excuse me. After class today, you have this little quiz for palindromic primes. And then you also have these assignment cards here, Python strings and reverse string. I believe this one is reading and videos, and then this one is actually assignments here. Try to have those started or completed, hopefully, before class 2, strings in depth. And then after class 2, you will have a real quiz with multiple questions. The last thing to go over on the Learn platform, I do believe, is your career cards. So I believe a great deal of you mentioned that you are looking for jobs or that you're getting into a job and you want to use Python basically for career purposes. Part of being a programmer is looking like a programmer. Actually, I would say that's like 65% of being a programmer. So we have these career cards here, things like polish up your social media profiles, polish your LinkedIn personal profile, and complete your rmotr profile. Things like that are totally optional for anybody who is looking for a job. But we used to have them all bunched up at the 4th month, and it got to be a lot of work. So we're spreading them all out now throughout all 4 months. Basically, if you stay on top of this stuff, it really does help polish your resume and when people look at you, they can see that you actually look like a programmer. It's not required though. So don't feel stressed if you don't want to do it, or if you've already got a job and you're not worried about this kind of stuff. It doesn't hurt though. But again, this first 2 weeks, we're going to be having a lot of time spent coding. So if you don't get to it, I totally understand. Another thing about the Learn platform that I totally forgot about, which is very, very important, is here you can see we have mentors available. Mentors are available Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm not sure where you are. I'm not sure where you are individually, but generally the mentor hours are the same time as class. So if we have class today, you won't be able to make the mentor hours, but you could have made the mentor hours yesterday. You can go see the mentor hours tomorrow, or you can join the extra session that I will post tomorrow. Friday, there will be mentor hours. Even if we don't have class, it will be at the same time that we would normally have class. We also have mentor hours Saturday morning from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm not sure what that translates to you all individually, but basically it's 12 hours before class would normally end. So it's in the morning. Just check it out. If you are on this web page during times that a mentor is available, you will see this button here that says ask your question. That's going to basically open Zoom, and it's going to put you in a one-on-one Zoom conference with our mentors, whoever's available at the time, and you can ask your question. If no one is available, it will just say something like post your question, which I believe it says right under here. What that does is it shoots an email to our mentor team, and someone will get back to you within a couple hours, depending on when you ask and who is available. If you guys go into the student resources, you can see that we had a mentor calendar available. So you can see when people are actually available, and you can check it against what time it is right now. Again, this is in the student resources, so it will be in there somewhere. All right.
Sorry, Jordan.
Yeah, what's up?
Where is that? Where's student resources?
So the student resources should be down here. Let's see. Student resources. Oh, I'm sorry. It's on in the unit thing under the card. Each individual card has resources, or not the card, but the classes each have the slides and the resources posted down here at the bottom. So if you click resources, there's going to be a bunch of resources, and it's all this stuff right here. Oh, the tutor calendar is not in here, so let me just post that for you. And I will just put it here. All right, updated, totally up to date. Now you guys will know when you have mentor hours forever. All right, let's see. If a mentor is not available, again, the button will pop up to basically email a mentor. If that's not good enough for you, again, I'm plugging the Slack general channel. If you ask questions there, someone will answer for sure. I guarantee it. All of us on the staff have Slack on our phones. We definitely all have it on our computers as well. Somebody will get to you as soon as they are able. So feel free to post either in the general channel or just the B28 students private channel. That's just for you guys. You guys can go ahead and post any questions that you have in there, and we see all of them. If none of that is working fast enough, one quick tip that I want to show you is Google. If you have any problems with anything ever, you can Google just how to find palindromic primes in Python. If you Google something, you will see that you are definitely not going to be the first person who had that problem. If you are the first person who had that problem, you are way off the reservation, and probably nobody here will be able to help us because you're going to be at a level none of us have ever achieved. But again, if you literally figure out how to Google what your problem is in Python, that's half the battle right there. It's not a very sexy answer, but real programmers are constantly Googling things. We use Stack Overflow, we use Reddit, we use what else? Code Review. We use Google. It's a very important tool because there's a lot of stuff out there. Like programming is a lot of things, and there's no way to know everything unless you're Santa. You just can't get by without figuring out how to Google stuff eventually. So the earlier you start, the sooner you will get the hang of it, and you will learn this stuff that much more quickly. I promise you. So if you go into any of these problems and you have issues with like invoking functions or function arguments, and you just Google Python, what are function arguments? You're going to come up with something, and hopefully, like if you figure out how to understand what you're looking for, it definitely makes you unstoppable as a programmer. And another thing I wanted to talk about is, while you guys are in class, you have unlimited access to me. So while we're in class, do not be shy. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask me questions. You can interrupt me. I won't be offended. I am here to make sure that you learn, and I can't do that if I don't know that you're having problems. The people who speak up most in class tend to do the best. Unless you already have experience and you just want to sit back and be quiet in class, like, the best way to engage in class, or the best way to learn the material, is to engage in class, and engage in class by answering questions when I ask them and asking me questions when you have them. All right, does anybody have any questions about anything that I just went over? It's a lot of information. Okay. There's just a few things left to show you. This website here may become one of your best friends. This is pythontutor.com. I'm going to paste the link into the chat. Yes, Basil, sorry, I missed your question in the chat. Yes, you have access to everything forever. Once you are in the Slack channel, we're never going to kick you out of the Slack channel. So feel free to abuse that. Use the Slack channel as much as you want. Even we have people on the Slack who regularly post who have jobs or have gone through the hiring process, and throughout the entire hiring process, they ask us questions, or they ask Santa questions, or they ask other Jason questions. Like, there's no problem with you using the Slack channel forever, because you will definitely have access to the Slack channel forever. But getting back on track, I wanted to say that this is Python Tutor. It may not seem like it makes sense right now, but what Python Tutor does is, if you go to visualize your code and get live help, you can basically paste any code you want right here for problem in, I don't know. So let's just do print hello world. If we paste some code in here and we do visualize execution, this is a terrible example because there's only one line of code, but Python Tutor will step through each line of code and tell you what's going on. So if you write some code and something breaks and you don't know what's going on, you can paste it here in Python Tutor, step through it one line at a time. It will go up until wherever it breaks, and it will tell you what's going on. So if I go back and I do something like, let's save a variable, and we'll call our variable is equal to Basil. So we have a variable here. Our other variable is Sarah. So if we print hello world, and then we print our variable, and then we print our other variable, now we visualize we can step through more than one line at a time. So we've got 6 lines here. One of them is just empty white space. So we've got 5 steps to look through. You'll notice this red arrow here is going to tell us where the computer is actually at while we are stepping through. So I'm just going to press forward. You're going to see a global variable here has been defined. Our global variable is, its value is Basil. Stepping forward, we've got other variable is Sarah. And then going forward, we've got print output here for hello world. We've got Basil, and then we've got Sarah. So it's pretty handy. You guys will definitely want to use that if you get stuck up on anything in any of the assignments. It's very incredibly useful. The other thing I wanted to introduce you all to right now is called REPL. This is REPL, and I'm going to go ahead and basically, I'm just going to type it in because it's repl.it. If you go there and you make an account, it's totally free. It's an online IDE. What that means is we can print some code here or type in some code here. And when we press run, it's going to run and capture our output here on the right. So if we do a simple print hello world and we press run, it's going to print hello world on this side. Is this big enough for everybody? Can everybody see this at 125%? I see Musa shaking his head. Anybody
Yes.
else? All right. Thumbs up. We're all good. Okay. So REPL is what we are going to be using today and for the next 2 weeks, I believe, before we get into more serious hardcore stuff. Does anybody have any questions on that? Does anybody have any questions on anything I've said so far?
Do you need an account to get started in REPL?
You don't actually need an account, but if you create an account, what happens when you open a new REPL is it generates a new URL for you, and you can save this URL so anybody can see your program later if you share the URL with them. If you don't create an account, it will just give you a random URL, and I don't believe you can save those random URLs.
So is Slack just about like online messaging? And
Basically,
then
yes.
What's GitHub for?
That's a good question. GitHub is its own class in 2 weeks. So GitHub is its own thing. I can't do it justice right now without talking for a good hour. So I will definitely remember Sarah wants to know GitHub, and I will introduce it to you personally along with everybody else in the class. I believe 3 classes from now. 2 classes from now, maybe 2 classes from now. So don't worry about GitHub yet. You will get the hang of it. If you check out the career cards at the bottom of Unit 1, it will give you a short little introduction to GitHub, at least insofar as making a profile is concerned. I hope that answered your question, but good question.
Thanks.
All right. Does anybody have any other questions before I jump right into it? Okay, then I am going to just jump right into it. What we are going to do today is we are going to make our very own first video game. We're going to make a simple number guessing game because that's about all we have the skill for at this moment. It's going to allow us to talk about different data types and control flow. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to say we want to make a game, or we're going to write a program here. For now, we're gonna set a global variable that's going to be a number, and we want a player to be able to guess that number. So I'm just gonna say random number is equal to 9. Perhaps not my favorite number, but a good number nonetheless. So what we want to do is get input from a player. The player is going to guess a number. We're going to save that input. We're going to compare it with our random number that I have just assigned, so it's not random at all. And we're just going to tell the player if they're correct, and we're going to tell the player if they're wrong. If they are wrong. If they are wrong. Okay. Does anybody have any suggestions on how we should begin? Or rather, I just began, so does anybody have any suggestions on how we should continue?
I mean, you need to have the player, you need to ask the player to enter a number, right?
Absolutely. I like where your head's at. Good point, Mike. We are going to go ahead and we're going to ask the player to guess a number. So let's do this. We're going to do input, if I can type today. And we're going to say, guess a number between 0 and 10. And we'll put a little space there for them to actually answer. So this input is a command for Python that tells the computer basically to ask the player for, or ask the user rather, for input. So if we run this, you're going to see, guess a number between 0 and 10. I'm going to get rid of this exclamation mark because it's ugly. We're going to run that again. So guess a number between 0 and 10, and then it lets us put in a number. And then when I press enter, nothing happens. So we need to do some more work. We need to do a little bit more work to make this game actually work. What I want to do is save the user's input so we can compare it later. So I'm going to go ahead and in the front of this input here, I'm going to add a space so I can type. I'm going to do user's guess is equal to this input. Now, whenever I put this in, I'm going to save this as a variable called user's guess. And we can see that the computer is saving it if we print it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this now. We've got a random number equal to 9. I'm going to guess a number between 0 and 10. I'm going to guess 5 again. And when I press enter, it's going to print 5 back at me because it's saving that number that I input as a variable called user's guess. Does everybody see how that works so far? All right. So, Mike, you are off to a great start. Does anybody want to take a stab at what we need to do next to make this game actually work?
Don't you use like a while function, like true and false statements?
Hey, Oscar, you are on the right track. What you were talking about is simple control flow. We're not going to use a while function right now, but we are going to use an if statement. So let's do an if statement. With an if statement, we can compare things, or it basically, with an if statement, Python is going to check and see if something is true or not. We just need to tell it what we're checking to see if it is true. So I'm going to begin the if statement by typing if. I'm going to say if user's guess is equal to random number, then you end with a colon there and you press enter. When you press enter, it's important that you have 4 spaces of white space there. Otherwise, it actually will not work. Python is very, very strict with white space. It makes it easier to read, but it can also be troublesome if you've come from other languages. So if user's guess is equal to random number, there's a few more things I want to unpack here besides this white space, and that is this comparator right here. This is a comparator. Right here, we have one equal sign, and what that does is it sets a value. If we have 2 equal signs, that's the same as saying in English is equal to. So we are comparing to see if the thing on the left and the thing on the right are equal. And if they are, Python is going to do something. So the thing we are going to do is we're going to print you win. It's that simple. Else, we can do something else. So else, which is the other statement in simple control flow, we can print you lose. All right. This looks like the foundation of a beautiful game right here. We have a random number that I have randomly assigned and chosen. It is 9, and it's always going to be 9. We have our user's guess, which is going to be equal to some input that we're asking from the user. We're going to compare that user's guess and our random number, which we have assigned up here. And we're going to, if they are the same, we're going to print you win. If they are anything but the same, we're going to print you lose. So let's go ahead and test this. One thing that I have not mentioned yet is that here at rmotr, we are huge into test-driven development. And what that means is that every time we write a bit of code, if it changes anything, we're going to test it. We're going to test it and make sure it works the way we expect it to work. So let's go ahead and test that now. I'm going to press run and guess a number between 0 and 10. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to guess 5 again because I want to guess a wrong number. All right, so we guessed 5, and as expected, erase that. As expected, we are losing because 5 is not equal to 9. Let's run this one more time, and we're going to put in the correct answer, 9. Does anybody have any idea what's going to happen?
If you win.
Win.
I'm sorry?
You win.
All right, that's a good guess, but unfortunately we lost. Does anybody have any idea why that happened? This is why we test everything.
Well, because we didn't specify that if the input equals 9, then we're going to win.
So we actually do specify that, Aya. We're checking right here. If the user's guess is equal to random number, and random number is equal to 9, user's guess is equal to whatever value we put in here.
Guess is a string.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That is absolutely correct. So you guys may notice in this IDE, we have some awesome features that include color coding. This 9 is an integer. That is a special data type used in Python for storing numbers. This orange part here between the quotations is a string. So whatever is in here is a different data type than what is in here. Even if they have the same character, they may not have the same value. So if we check this out, we can print the type of user's guess, if I can type it correctly. So let's go ahead and make a guess. If we guess 9, we can print the type, and the type is str, which is short for string. What that means is if we're going to compare our input with our random number, we need to change a string into an integer. So let's go ahead and make a new value called user's guess int, and we will set that equal to integer of user's guess. All right, so I've done a few things here. I've gone and I've used this int function, and what this does is if a string is passed in this function right here, it will change that string to its integer value. So if we put in any integer here, that's any number, any whole number, we can change it from a string into an integer.
Is it necessary to use 2 lines for that? Or could you do it in one?
You're absolutely correct. I just like to divide this out in the beginning so it's very clear.
Okay.
So I just want to show you. I'll change it. I'll change it for you, Michael, specifically.
Thanks.
We're going to do user's guess int here to remind us that we're using an integer now instead of our string value that we had originally. So I'm going to go ahead and run this now. I'm going to guess a wrong number, and again, we lose as expected. And if we guess a right number now, we win, finally. All right, our game is working. Michael wants to refactor this Refactor means change it for the better. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep this as user's guess, and I'm going to just wrap that int function around this right here. So we can erase this line now. Rather, I won't erase it. I will comment it out so we can see it later. But what that means now is that we need to make sure we're comparing the right variable here. So I want to erase that user's guess int. So we change this to wrap this integer. So it's going to change, it's going to take our input, create a string that is equal to our input, and it's going to change that string into an integer. That integer will be saved as user's guess, and we'll use user's guess to compare with our random number to make the actual game happen. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to guess 5. We lose, and one more time from 9, and we win. All right, so it's working as expected. Good point there, Michael, with the saving lines. One thing you guys will learn with Python is that if you can do things in fewer lines, you generally should do things in fewer lines. Fewer lines is better. Sometimes we keep things in extended format. We keep things written in multiple lines that don't need to be. That makes it more readable, but it doesn't necessarily make it better. Generally, fewer lines is better. All right, does anybody have any questions on everything that I just went through right now? Because it is a lot of stuff.
So
Never seen programming before.
So when you create a variable, it automatically assigns its value as a string?
Not necessarily. If we use input, input will always save our input as a string.
Okay.
That is a good question though, Will.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Can we make that random number random?
Yes, we can, and we will get there in just a little bit. Hang on there just a little bit longer. We're gonna add a little bit more complexity to our game first before we add that much complexity to our game. Right now, I want to keep the random number 9 so that we can just keep checking 9 and see if our game is working or not. Okay?
Hi. So we're always going to be using the integer function whenever we're using the numbers, right? I'm assuming.
Yes, because in this case, we do want to compare an integer, but there may be cases where you want a string from your user. Like if you're building an application that asks for somebody's email address, you don't want to change that into an integer because it's going to blow up on you.
Right.
Okay. Hey, Jordan, on that question related to what I was asking, if the random number is really a random number, it could be a float or an integer or possibly some other type. In that case, what function do you use to take the input so they come on the same category, the same type?
So if I'll show you in just a little bit how to use random numbers, but when we use random numbers, it's always going to be an integer unless we specify otherwise.
Oh, we make it integer. All right.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go on forward. We're going to add just a little bit more complexity. We're going to introduce a few more ideas here and some other conventions. What I want to do next is I'm going to alter our control flow of this game a little bit, because right now, if we guess any number but the correct number, it just says you lose. It doesn't tell us anything useful. It doesn't tell us if we were close or not. I want to add a little bit. So we can check and see if we're close, basically. So what I need to do now is add a new variable. I'm going to put it up here at the top. And I'm going to call it close threshold. I'm going to set it equal to 3. I'm going to use this number so that if we guess within 3 spaces of the correct answer, it's going to say you were close. So what can I do now? We can change our little control flow statement here to add another statement. So underneath the if, I'm going to use elif. if I can spell it correctly, elif. And what elif is basically an if statement that will run if this statement proves to be false. Okay? So if we have another if statement here, like this, and this one is true, it will still run this next if statement. If we change this to elif, it will cancel out of running this line here once we have this line showing to be true. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the absolute value of our guess minus, or our random number minus our guess, and I'm going to check and see if that number is within 3. And if it is, we're going to print something like, you were so close, the answer was 9. So let's do that right now. I'm going to use a new function called absolute value. And what that does is it takes a number, if it's positive or negative, and it's just going to return me the positive value of that number. So I'm going to do random number minus user's guess. And if the absolute value of that is less than our close threshold, then we're going to do something. And we are going to print, you were so close, the answer was 9. All right. So one thing I want to ask you guys real quick is I have close threshold here. I've assigned it up here. I made sure to put it above my random number, but it's all in capital letters. Does anybody have any suspicions of why that might be?
It's a constant.
That is correct. So in Python, we don't actually have constants. We don't have unchangeable variables that we do have in other programming languages. So what we do have is programming conventions. The convention is, if you see a variable that's in all capital letters, that means do not change that variable no matter what. It's a constant. You don't want to mess with it anywhere in the program. You can change it up here when you set it, but if you see it down here, you don't ever want to add to it. You don't ever want to subtract from it. You don't ever want to do anything that will alter that number because it may affect things later on. All right, so now that I've gotten that little rant out of the way, I'm going to run this and I'm going to try our program again. I'm going to run this and I'm going to say, guess a number 0, we lost. All right, that's what we wanted. We're going to guess a number now. We're going to guess a close number. We're going to guess 8. You were so close. The answer was 9. Perfect. And we're going to guess 9 and still we win. All right. So what if our number wasn't 9? What it's going to tell us you were so close. The answer is 9 every single time, even if we set a random number. We don't actually want that. So what I'm going to do is called string formatting. In Python, I'm going to erase this number 9 here, and I'm going to put these curly brackets. And what that does is it tells Python that there's a space there where I can plug stuff in if I use .format. So if I use .format, it's going, whatever I put in these parentheses after the format, right here, is going to be plugged in into these little curly braces. So what do I want to put in the format statement? Can anybody tell me?
Random number.
Absolutely correct. Good answer. Is it Musa? Right. So
yes.
Random number. Let's try that. And we will see. So guess a number between 0 and 9. We're going to guess 8 again, and it should say, so close, the answer was 9. Absolutely. So our format statement here works. We have a little bit more functionality to our game. So if we're close now, it will tell us that we're close instead of just telling us that we lost. What else do we want here? I believe it was, who was it? Aya? Aya wanted random numbers, right? Instead of a random number that I set, I wanted an actual random number. So let's do that next. Up here, and this is another convention, above any static variables, above any normal global variables, above any static variables, I'm going to put an import statement. So in Python, one of the greatest things about Python is that there are, I want to say millions, but probably not millions. There's probably hundreds of thousands of different libraries that are user-generated content that have been put into Python that we can steal from. So what I'm going to do is just type the word import, and we're going to import one of those libraries called random. We can use this library to generate an actual random number. So I'm going to spare you guys asking you how to do this, and I'm just going to do this one for you. But I'm going to do random.randint, and we're going to guess a number between 0 and 10. So what this does is it's going to generate a random number between 0 and 10. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. We're going to save that as our random number. Now that's great, but I foresee a problem. While we're testing this, we have no way of testing anymore to see if we're right, if we're close, and if we're wrong. Anytime I run this, it's going to be a crapshoot. And if I guess 5, I can be wrong. And before now, if I guess 8, I was close before, but now I lose because I have no idea what the number is. And if I guess 9, which is what I had it set for, we lose. Thanks, Aya. You broke it. I don't know how to test it anymore. So we're gonna fix that real quick. I'm gonna do another convention. We're gonna call this debug. So to debug, I'm just going to put debug in big bold letters here, and I'm going to set that equal to true. Now, I can do, let's see, under here, I'll do if debug is equal to true, we can print random number. All right. So what this does now is that if debug here, which I set the value here, is equal to true, we can print the random number. And once we're finished with this program, we can set debug equal to false, and we won't be able to see the random number anymore. So let's run this, and I can show you guys what I'm talking about. Now, when I run this, it will say 8. Guess a number between 0 and 10. We can test it, and we can do 5. We lost. Now we do it again. The number's 8 again. Strange. And we will do 7, and you were so close. The answer was 8. And then 5, we can do 5 and guess the correct answer, and you win. So all 3 test cases now are working. Let's change this a little bit so it's a little bit friendlier. We'll just say print the number is blank, and I'll do dot format random number. Now if I run this, it will say the number is 7, and we can guess whatever we need to.
Real quick, what are the open and closed brackets?
Yes.
I don't really understand those. What do they do?
This one right here?
Yeah.
So when we do a dot format statement, Python is going to look for these curly brackets, and inside those curly brackets, it's going to replace the curly brackets, whatever I put inside the format parentheses here.
Oh,
okay.
So
if I do dot format, the number is, and I just type in, if I do like this, the number, now it's going to replace the number is with the number is the number. I can replace it with anything here, including variables that I have set above, including random number. So now when I run this, it will tell me the number is 5 because it generated that number and it plugged it in there for me. Typically, if I don't have the dot format statement, like if I don't put the dot format right here, it will just say the number is, and then give me the little duck butt brackets.
Okay.
For each variable that you want to inject, you need a separate pair of curly brackets?
I need an, yeah, so if I want to do, let's do, you were so close, the number was blank, and you guessed blank, blank, I was going to type it. We can do dot format, random number, comma, and then user's guess. So if we do this now, we can do the number 7. We'll guess 6. You were so close. The answer was 7, and you guessed 6. We just need to divide them by a comma. I think that's comma. Yeah, comma. Divide them by a comma, and you can put as many as you want, and you can daisy chain as many as you want into your string here. Good question. Does anybody else have any questions before I continue?
So if you want to stop, if you want to stop running your test, I guess you put debug to false, and then it'll be kind of your normal game again.
Yeah, so with this, if debug is equal to true, I can set debug equal to basically anything that's not true. So if I set debug equal to 3, it will no longer be equal to true. So it is no longer in debug mode. And I don't have that print statement here telling me that the number is blank.
Hey, Jordan, does debug have any special meaning here, or is it just another variable?
I'm sorry, does debug have a special meaning?
Yeah, or is it some of this?
Some programming languages do give debug a special meaning, but in Python, we don't have that special meaning. So we only have the convention of setting it equal to something.
But are we going to cover more formal debug, like setting it on and off, like the built-in one?
Built-in with Python? There is no built-in debug with Python is what I'm saying. We only have the convention. I hope that answers your question. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So some programming languages actually have built-in debug features. Python does not. So we just have this convention that we type debug equals true, and we check if debug is equal to true. Then we run whatever our debug statement is, or our debug mode, our debug version of our program.
And it has to be in capital letter, right? Case sensitive debug.
It is case sensitive, but we're putting it in capital letters because we want it to be a static variable. Meaning, if we set debug equal to true up here, never in our program do we ever want to change debug down here to be like debug equals false. That's a big no-no. If you have capital letters on your variable, you don't want to change the value of your variable ever.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I guess it's just for you to know, or will Python actually show an error?
Python won't. I mean, if we do debug here, this is a different variable because it's written differently. Python isn't going to check. So we've got this, we broke Python here, so name debug is not defined because we have debug in capital letters up here. It doesn't make a difference to Python as long as we write the same thing where we are referencing it. But good question. Any other questions? I hope that was, did that answer your question, Aya? I think that's what you meant.
Yes.
Okay.
I had a question on the dot format.
Yeah, what's up?
Would that next to it that's in parentheses, would that be considered an argument or parameters or no?
I believe they're actually, the correct terminology in Python is parameter. But yeah, the arguments, parameters, whatever we plug in here, this argument that we're passing is going to be either argument or parameter, same thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hey, Jordan, the import function for random, how do you know what are all the library available and what are all the methods in those functions?
That's a really good question. It comes with experience. As you are doing things in Python, you're going to realize like, oh man, this is really a lot of code. I wonder if there's an easier way of doing this. And if you Google it, you'll find out, hey, you know, like if we need to come up with our own random number, we can do something like we can make a bunch of random numbers. So we can do like numbers to choose from equals like 98765432210. Let's make it a string here. Oh man, my keyboard, why? There we go. Okay, so 987654321, and we'll set it as a string. Oh no, that's not good either. Why Japanese, why? All right, so 987654321. We've got our string here, and we get a random number out of these numbers, put in a 0. We would have to write an entire program just to figure out how to get actually randomly Python to choose these numbers. Does that make sense? Because getting something to be actually random with a computer is technically not possible. So we have a library, somebody built a library to do it for us. And we can just look at this problem and be like, how would we generate a random string, or how would we generate a random integer given these 9, 10 digits right here? How would we figure it out? Sorry about that, Nirmal, I'm gonna mute you. You've got some feedback going on. How would we figure out how to get a random number out of here? Like if you Google how to get a random number in Python, so we Google this, we'll see how to generate a random number is going to be this one I've clicked on already. So let's check this one out. How to generate a random number, and then you'll see the first answer right here says to import this random library because somebody already wrote this code for us. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's basically, that's how you figure out if you need a new library or not.
Is this a user written code that could be uploaded into Python's general repository of?
Random is not actually user generated. I believe random is just part of the extended Python library. I believe it's actually written by the Python organization people, but there are libraries for everything out there because somebody has written something for everyone. Any other questions before I move on?
So I see your random number is run int. That stands for integers, right?
Yeah.
If
So
you
we're
want
generating in here, this is the function for generating a random integer using this random library.
So if we don't want, we want float, so this will change to float or what?
I don't actually know. So Python, how to generate a random float. How to generate a number between a float range. I would imagine, so we have to use random uniform here instead of random int.
Oh, you know, okay. Distribution.
Yeah.
Right.
Just so everybody knows what I'm talking about, an integer is a whole number only. Floats are a special kind of number that have a decimal value. So if there is a decimal in your number, you want to basically, you can't use integers because it will round off to the nearest whole number. Floats they use decimals. In some other languages, they're called doubles, I believe. All right, any other questions before I move on? Good questions, everybody. I'm liking the questions. All right, so we've got this game here, and if it runs now, so yeah, let's run it. We're gonna run. If we get the wrong number, basically the game is just over. So the number is 6, we lose, and then every time we play again, if we do something like the number is 10 and we get 9 and we were close, like it feels bad knowing that we were close but we couldn't get another chance to play again. So let's rewrite, or let's refactor this program so that we can continue guessing until we get the right answer. Does that sound like it'd be more fun? So let's try that. I don't remember who it was, but somebody mentioned earlier that we might want to use a while loop. And you were absolutely correct. So I'm going to throw in a while loop here. And in order to do that, basically, we need to do while, and we need to type in something that's not true. And if it becomes true, or something that's not true that can become true later. So a while loop is a special kind of loop that's going to check for basically it's going to check your environment for something, whatever you tell it to check for. And if that is true, it's going to continue running all the code that's inside the while loop until it's no longer true. So we're going to say while users guess, and we have our random number, so we have random number, and we can compare these. You guys remember, we're comparing these right here with a comparator. We want to do the opposite right now and check while it is not equal to random number, run all of this code. So let's do that. This is not equal to. It is the same as writing not like this. But basically, it's just the opposite of a comparator, checking to see if two things are equal on the left hand and the right hand side. And also, just so you know, in Python, there's a million ways to do everything. You can also, with a comparator, you can just check is. If users guess is random number, and it will check and see if they're the same thing. Just two different ways of doing the same thing. So while users guess is not equal to random number, if users guess is equal to random number, oh, we actually don't want to put the while loop here. You're close, but that's not where I want it. I'm going to unindent all of this. I'm going to put the while loop up here. So while users guess is not equal to random number, and I'm going to indent all of this so I can catch it inside my while loop. Get rid of some of this white space. So while users guess is not equal to random number, we're going to ask for input from the player. We're going to compare all of that input the same exact way. So let's test that and see if it runs. And it doesn't, because users guess is not defined. What's the problem? Users guess is defined right here. Does anybody know what's going on with this program? How can I fix this?
You define the variable after you used it. So
that's absolutely correct. So thank you,
Dan.
Dan.
Line.
It's important to note that Python runs line by line by line by line by line. So if we use some variable here, but we have it defined down here, it's always going to break, because Python won't check the rest of this function, or it won't check the rest of this program to see if we define it somewhere else. We need to define every variable before we use it. So let's just go ahead and put users guess up here, and we will set it equal to, I don't know, 100. None. We'll set it equal to none here. So we're going to set users guess equal to none, because then it will never be any of these numbers, because it's none. It's a null value sort of thing. Does that make sense to everybody? So now that we've defined users guess, if we run this again, it will actually work. So our number is 9. We want to guess 8. You were so close. The answer was 9, and you guessed 8. So guess it's going to ask again. So let's get rid of that. Let's just do you were so close. How about that? Now if we run this and we do something close, the number is 7, we're going to guess 6. You were so close, and it tells us to guess again. So let's guess 8. You were so close, and it tells us to guess again. And then we guess 43, you lose. You want to guess 4, we lose. and then we get 7. We win, and the program terminates.
What if you don't want to play continuous loops and you want to maybe, I don't know, instead of going like into infinity, you just only want to play 10 times, or?
You're definitely on the right track of where we are headed, Mike. So I'm going to get to that in just... What?
I'll sit back and shut up.
No, it's a good question, and I appreciate you asking me, because other people have, in other classes, brought up things that we wanted to add to the game before. So definitely, we're taking all suggestions on this end. We are going to limit the players' guesses for sure. Well, one thing I want to do... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
In the release of this game, can you get the graphics to be a little better? Maybe like some bunny rabbits or something?
We can work on that. We can definitely work on that, Dan.
Cool.
I think there's
Jordan,
other engines out there called like Pygame and things like that we could do to throw in some graphics.
Hey, Jordan, your code is off the screen. Can you put your code back on this?
Where is my... All right.
That's good. That's good.
My code was off the screen?
Yeah, it was to the left.
Okay. I'm not entirely certain what you mean, but if you see it happen again, please let me know, and I'll try to fix it. All right. So I mentioned before that here at rmotr, we absolutely love test-driven development. And you guys have noticed that every time we test this, or every time I change the program, I test it at least 3 times to check all 3 of these cases. So let's just rewrite this program real quick so that I can basically only make sure that it works every single time. We're going to do that by introducing a helper function. So I'm going to go ahead and write a new function, and we basically can write whatever we want. But this is how we write a new function. We have to start with defining our function. We are going to give it a name, and we're going to ask what parameters we want to pass, or we want to tell it what parameters we want to pass. So I'm going to start with define, which is the name of the function for defining a function. We're going to give it a name called user's result, if I can type it correctly. And we're going to take a guess. We're going to take an answer, and we're going to take a threshold. And I'm going to put in a docstring here. The docstring is going to be 3 apostrophes or quotations, single quotations, I believe is what they're called in Python. 3 single quotations or 3 double quotations. It doesn't matter. You can get fancy with either one. Just try not to confuse them. And what that does is it allows you to write a multi-line comment. So in this multi-line comment, we are going to write down what our helper function actually does. It's going to check the user's answer and return one of 3 things. So we are going to return a 1 if the answer is correct. Let's format it a little nicer like this. So we're going to return a 0 if the answer is incorrect but is close. And we're going to return a -1 otherwise. So how can we do this? Let's go ahead and write our function now. So I'm going to do if guess is equal to answer, return 1, elif absolute value of guess, wait, no, answer minus guess is less than threshold, return 0. Else, return -1. All right. Does anybody recognize this code? You all should, because it's almost exactly what we have here, except with print statements in our actual game, and we've got return statements here in our helper function. Does that make sense to everybody? So there's a little bit of a difference between a print statement and a helper function, or a print statement and a return statement. There's a world of difference between a print statement and a helper function. So in our print statements here, when you come on this answer, or when you come on this branch or this path, when user's guess is equal to random number, it's going to print this, and then it's going to go on to the next line. Does that make sense to everybody? Here, if we return, it's going to print, not print, it's just going to return. It's not going to print at all. It's going to return this value that we tell it to return, and then it's going to close out the function. So it won't do anything after it returns. It won't check any of these other branches at all, no matter what. So you remember if I said if we had two if statements here, it's going to do if user's guess equals random number, print you win. If absolute value is less than close threshold here, it's going to print you were so close. But if we have two if statements, it's going to check and see if either of these are true, or if both of them are true, it's going to do both things. In this statement up here, even if we only have an if statement, it's only ever going to do one of these branches, because the return will stop the function. It will close out of the function. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm going to go ahead and refactor all of this code now. We can get rid of all of this and put some spaces in here so we can write new stuff. We just wrote this function here to help us out. We defined it up here. It's called user's result. We're passing 3 parameters, which we should all recognize because we have a guess, which we're getting from user's guess, or rather we're getting from int of input. Here we go, user's guess. This is where we were getting our user's guess before. We can put that user's guess in as our guess. We're getting answer because we're generating, where are we generating? We're generating a random number, and that random number is going to be our answer. And then we've also got a threshold, which should be recognizable because we are setting a close threshold up here. So now that we have this function, we can just plug in, we can write down that we want to use this function, plug in values for these parameters, pass the arguments, and we're going to get 0, 1, 0, or -1. And depending on what we get, we will have whatever branch we want to go on. So let's just talk less and do more and figure out how to actually use this. I'm going to do, we have user's guess is equal to none, while user's guess is not equal to random number. So we are going to do user's guess, again, is equal to the int of the input of guess a number. Just like that. And then we're going to do something new, and we're going to call it result. We're going to get this variable result, and we're going to compare it to whatever we get from here. Or rather, we're going to set it to whatever we get from this function. So let's do result is equal to, and we're going to do a function call, which is calling this function that we wrote over here by writing down its name. After we write down its name, we need a parentheses, and we need to pass each of these 3 parameters. So the first one is going to be a guess. For our guess, we want that to be user's guess. The second one is going to be the answer. We want that to be random number. And the third one is going to be our threshold, which is going to be close threshold. So we can use values that we already passed to write this, or to pass. We've used values that we've already defined to pass inside this function that we wrote ourselves. Now, result is going to be a 1, a 0, or a -1. And we can just test for that, or rather check for that. If result is equal to 1, we can print you win and put in a smiley face. If result is equal to 0, print you were so close. Try again. Else, print try again, loser. All right, so let's check this now. So the number is 7. We're gonna guess a number. We're gonna guess 1. Try again, loser. Okay, we're gonna guess again. We're going to guess 5. You were so close. Try again. We're gonna try again, and we're going to get 7, and we win this time. So our program works exactly the same, except now we have this function in here that checks already for us and returns a 0, 1, or a -1. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Does anybody have any questions on all of this? Because that helper function is a difficult concept. We don't actually need a helper function in this case, but I want to introduce it to you now because we're going to be using it extensively going forward in the future. Okay?
What's the impact of the guess? I mean, the function that you just define on top. What is the impact of that on how many times we are allowed to enter? I don't see.
There's no impact yet. That's going to be the next thing we're going to do right now is we're going to limit the number of attempts.
Okay.
Hey, Jordan, should the function be defined before it is called, or can we define it?
Yes, absolutely. Everything in Python needs to be defined before it's called. So we define it up here in line 7, and we don't use it down until here in line 28. So we've got it right here in line 28 where we actually do the function call. So we define it 21 lines above it. Any other questions?
Sorry, but doesn't this make it a little bit more complicated? Like the way earlier was easier, but I'm kind of confused on why we're using the helper statement way.
So we're using this helper statement here because it's going to do all of this checking for us, this absolute value. And if we have anything wrong with that, we no longer need to test it all 3 times. Because if we don't test it, well, we need to test it all 3 times to see what's going to happen, but we don't need to test it to see if it breaks all 3 times because we have this code here. It will break in our function because we have the function call. If there's anything wrong inside the function, when we call the function, it's going to break. Okay. So if I write just here, if I try in the function, I try to use a variable that we haven't set. So we're going to do print, and we'll do a variable we haven't set called Oscar. So if we print Oscar, we run it here, we're going to guess a number, and we're going to do 5, and it's going to say our function breaks here, or our program breaks, because inside our function, we are calling a name Oscar that is not defined.
Okay.
So it's just a little bit of like an extra layer of security, basically, with our helper function. But you're right, it was more simple doing it this way. But this actually is a lot cleaner than checking to see if users guess is random number, blah, 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 because it's fewer strokes. Of course, we did have to set the function up here so it balances out in the end, but I don't know, it's just a trade-off. There's really no right answer on what is, like, if something is simple and easily readable versus being more Pythonic and doing it in, I don't know, you just have to choose which way to do it. But you're absolutely right. We didn't need this. I just wanted to introduce helper functions because we have a function here. Now we have a function call inside of our program, and without it, we wouldn't have done any function calls today. And it's an important concept that we need. All right. If there are no more questions, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to show us, basically we're going to take our game and we're going to limit the number of attempts.
Quick question.
Yeah, what's up?
Line 28. The result is a variable with 3 dimensions, right? User guess, random number, close threshold.
Yeah, we don't use the word dimensions. We use parameters. But yes.
Okay.
User's result requires 3 parameters.
Yes.
To run. And all of those are going to be input and simplified into an output that is either 1, 0, or -1. So result is only ever going to be 1, 0, or -1.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I hope that answers your question. All right. So this game is starting to look like a real game. It's starting to be workable, like we can actually run it, but it still sucks because you can't lose. You just go on and on forever. Let's go ahead and limit the attempts. So to do that, let's just make a new variable. We'll call it number of attempts, and we'll do this. We'll set it equal to 3. Now, what we need to do is we need to change our while loop so that it checks for the number of attempts and it checks to see if our user's guess is not equal to a random number. Does anybody have any idea how we want to do this?
Just add it to your while condition.
All right, how do we add it to our while condition?
While what you have there, or and.
There we go, and. We want to use and.
Less than your num attempts.
Okay, so let's do a few things. We'll add a new variable here. We're going to do attempts equals 0. So we can do and attempts is less than number of attempts. So it's going to check and see now, because we're using and, it's going to check and make sure that both of these things are true. You did say or at first. If we used or instead of and, it's going to check if either one of these is true, it will run all of this code. With and, both of these statements need to be true for it to run this code. And the last thing we need to do here is make sure when we're going through this, we need to do attempts, and we need to add 1 to it. So we can do plus, or rather equals, attempts plus 1. Now this gets the job done. What it does is it takes attempts and it gives it a new value, which is the old value plus 1. But I don't ever want to see any of you guys doing this, because I'm going to teach you a better way right now. If you do this, if you write it like this, where attempts equals attempts plus 1, you will immediately stand out as somebody who doesn't know how to code. It's just the way it is, and I don't want you to be caught with your pants down like that, so I'm going to show you the better way of doing it. We're going to do attempts plus equals 1. That's it. So this is going to be the same exact thing, but it just looks more Pythonic. It takes the old value, it adds 1 to it, and it saves it as a new variable called attempts. Now, what this does is every time we loop through this code, it's going to hit this line, it's going to add 1 to our attempts. And if attempts, whatever it is, becomes greater than, or maybe, yeah, greater than the number of attempts that we have allowed up here, then it's not going to enter this loop. Does that make sense to everybody? So let's just run it and I'll show you what I mean. We're gonna guess the number is 7. Actually, I'm gonna stop right quick and I'm going to, first, we're going to print, you have guessed blank times. And we'll do another format statement, dot format, and we will just type in attempts here. So let's do that. So we're gonna run it now. The number is 0, guess a number. Let's do 9, 6, accident. So you have guessed 0 times, try again, loser. So that's not exactly right. Let's start off with attempts equal to 1. So let's do that. Guess a number. The number is 9. We're going to guess 5. You've guessed 1 time, try again, loser. We're going to guess 6. You've guessed 2 times, try again, loser. And we're going to guess 7. Oh, well, it closes on there. So let's do number of attempts equals 4. Or no, let's do that. We're going to keep it equal to 3 because that makes more sense when you read it. We're going to keep this equal to 0. And after, we're going to not put that there. We're going to put it here. So now if I have attempts up here and I print it now, it will say, let's print it first. And then we can add 1. So we print how many times we've guessed, we've add 1, and then we tell you to guess a number. So let's run it like that. So the number is 2 because we're in debug mode. You've guessed 0 times, guess a number. We want to guess 9. You've guessed 1 time, try again, loser. We're going to guess 8, try again, loser. You have guessed 2 times. And then we're going to try 7, try again, loser. Well, I guess we don't want it to say try again, loser if we lose on the last one, but you get the general picture. Now this game works. We can limit the number of attempts that we have, and well, what else is there to say about it? We can do something like this where we print, let's do a new line. So print a new line, game is over. Or we'll just type game over. So we'll run that. Guess 0 times the number is 1. We're gonna guess 2. We're gonna guess 3. And we're gonna guess 1. So now we'll say you win. Game over. Maybe get rid of this space. All right. So we did a lot today. We talked about variables. We talked about constant or static variables. We talked about debug. We talked about importing. We talked about defining our own functions over here. We made a function call down here. We used a while loop. We used, flow control flow over here with our if statements, and we used it again up over here. We did string formatting. We did a lot of stuff. So does anybody have any questions on anything that we covered today? I'm gonna share the link in the chat so you guys can all open this whenever you feel like it and go back to it and check it out. Does anybody have any questions at all? Not necessarily about anything we covered in class. You guys can ask any questions about rmotr or programming or anything.
Hey, Jordan, one question.